So I guess I'll start. Hi, Dr. Heather Hunt. I'm so excited to be talking with you today, and I was hoping we could both introduce ourselves. So, do you want to get started?
Sure. My name's Heather Hunt. I'm a chiropractor in Nevada City, California. I have been practicing for almost 12 years, and beyond chiropractic, I also do functional medicine and cranial sacral therapy and nutrition, and kind of try to be a place that someone can come and even if I can't figure it out, I can help them get the information that they need in order to achieve optimal vital health.
And you do provide that place. That's how I first found you. Myself and my cousins all came to you for care. My name is Annie Aguilar, and I am, well, a recent graduate, kind of been doing a lot of things this past year. Um, I'm a dancer and a doula and a movement educator, and hoping to go back to school soon and visiting you, Dr. Heather Hunt, for care really changed so much for me. You were the first person ever to introduce me to what it means to be an empath in this world, and you also really helped my body and my family members too. We've all been going to you for so long. Um, and that kind of sparked, I mean, you become such a mentor to me so quickly. And in
Mhm.
these first few conversations we've had about what it means to be a health practitioner and sorting through sorting through which schools to apply to and where to find one's place, all of that, I'm just really grateful for the help and the guidance. And with that, like we've been talking a bit about what are the models of healthcare right now, and what is one stepping into as a student. And part of that question is what is vitality today? And we wanted to talk about that today a bit.
Yeah, it's something that I feel really passionate about and also really thankful for because I was raised by my dad, Dale Jacobson, and my mom, Diane. But my dad's a chiropractor, and they're from the 70s, and they both learned meditation, TM meditation at age 20, and before they even met each other, and they met at a yoga class. And then my dad went to chiropractic college, and I was so fortunate in that I grew up, eating all organic food and being part of a chiropractic framework, and it was just always my normal, and then I got to go to Waldorf school. And so basically I definitely was fortunate enough to grow up in a really great bubble of holistic thinking. And so it wasn't until I kind of actually really got pregnant that I entered into sort of the more mainstream paradigm around health. And so in and basically what it's informed me about was how chiropractic is unique in that it's focused really on the power of the body and the power to heal and vitality and just trusting the body that if you remove interference, that it can heal. And so we live in a different world than it was invented in 1895. And we live in a different world as far as toxicity goes. And so there's definitely things that go against health in a way bigger way than what was occurring when Dee Palmer was alive. But the basic tenets of chiropractic, I feel like are really some of the only tenets I know about that kind of is foundational for a healthcare model that is really based in wholeness and vitality and really trusting the body. As I moved into more functional medicine in the last 10 years, 7 years, I don't know. It's hard to keep track of. Wait, we won't forget the year, it's 2020. But I don't know, time is funny besides that. But even moving into functional medicine, we live in such a reductionist, like kind of model of separation where at least with functional medicine, they look at the big picture and system. So if somebody's having liver problems, if somebody's having gut problems, functional medicine looks outside that particular organ or organ system and thinks about what else is involved, like what else could be happening. The body is clearly more than a heart or more than lungs, and I have the utmost respect for mainstream medicine. A lot of people in my family are doctors, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, and I have grandmas that are nurses, and all my dad's best friends are MDs, so we definitely, I feel like we work alongside, and there's a place for everything in the world I want to be involved in. But I really feel like at this particular moment in time, when things are really falling apart in a lot of ways and people have so much stress, it's really time to get back to those basics and trusting that our bodies know how to do it. If we remove interference, if we remove restrictions, if we get clear about how we're connected. And also, I feel like, why not work as hard as we can to really not only be healthy, but to be vibrant and vital, because we can. I mean, not everybody. I'm definitely speaking from a place of privilege, and I definitely understand that. But as much as possible, how do we move into that? And in that vein also, what does vibrance and health look like? I mean, who's to say that somebody that's disabled or somebody with a disease process can't still have vibrance and vitality? But maybe we're going to use a different metric for how to measure that, And so that's just an investigation that I'm under right now, that I'm working with. But the thing that I really became clear of in the last few years is that most of medicine is deficiency model based, like how the body is deficient.
Wait, Heather, you went on mute just a second ago. There we go. Yeah, you were saying about how modern medicine. I can't hear you. Oh, you can't hear me? Now can you hear me? How about now? What?
There, now I can.
Oh, okay. Just took a second. You were just saying how modern medicine has a deficit model of care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's and not only is it based in, like, modern medicine is well, and I think it's more than just modern, truthfully, but based in and Western, I should say Western, because there's a lot of other systems of medicine that aren't based in deficiency. But it's to me, it's really important to get past that model of deficiency, because it's not only harmful, but it's also filled with a lot of potential blame that we can do to ourselves, of, like, blame around even disease processes that happen. If someone gets cancer, or, especially if they're kind of more in a, like, new age model, it's like, well, what emotion wasn't processed that allowed your cells to develop cancer, or what, there's just it puts a lot of pressure on us personally. And it's just to me a completely aberrant model. Whereas if we come into a model of holistic health, where the body is infinitely capable, miracles can happen. You find your team and you work with them, and you have incredible potential for healing. That to me, focusing on holistic, like true holism, there's a place for everything. So then it just becomes a conversation around, like I said, redefining metrics, redefining how we view things as successful, and also really how we view health. So it's a little complicated, but the main thing is just really focusing on vitality and what is possible and how we can have vitality in our every single cell of our body so that we can really be and do and have what we came here to this planet for.
Well, a couple specific questions around that. I think the first are, what are those restrictive factors that you were talking about? I have a feeling like we might not even realize what some of those are that restrict vitality. And then with that, how does one know that they are feeling vitality? I think there's this
Yeah.
quest for health, and it gets mixed up in commercialization and
Yeah.
beauty standards, or and whatever it may be. It's like financial success even. And so what is how do we talk about the essence of that?
Those are great questions. And it's something, like I said, I sort of feel like I love being in conversation because then synergy happens, and I love being in community. And also, I'm learning this from my patients. I mean, I have a foundation by how I was raised, but I'm also every day in investigation around these questions, and every new person that I come into contact with brings me to the next level of understanding myself. And so I definitely have an answer for the first question, answers for the first question of what could restrict us. So in the old model of chiropractic, it's all based on the nervous system. So the brain, the spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. And their idea was that there's this universal intelligence that is out in our world. You could say, God or love or interbeing or consciousness or source. There's lots of different words. And then that there's innate intelligence within all of us, like a individualized intelligence, basically. And that only when those two are in alignment and free of restriction are we free of dis-ease. So they do a DIS-ease. Like we lost the ease of our body, right? And so I pay attention to that in the olden days and still now in chiropractic. The idea is to take the restriction off the nerves in the body, especially the spine, in order for that alignment to flow. So it was akin to like stepping on a garden hose. So when a joint isn't functioning right, it has a fixation. Because of my dad's hounding, and we'll talk about this at some point, we don't prescribe to the bone out of place model. But when there's a aberrant, I love the word aberrant. It basically just means abnormal or disorganized, or, we could look that up at some point, but that's my favorite word for describing it. It's just lost track of normal, basically. When there's an aberrant movement pattern in a joint, like a restriction, when it's muscular, ligamentous, bony, in the bone capsular, then that interferes with the way the nerve exits the spine, and then that interferes with the nervous system and our ability to heal and to be healthy and have everything flow. And so that would be a chiropractic model. I definitely love clearing those kind of restrictions as a chiropractor, and adjustments are really quick and pretty easy, and you really do, you can, like, things change with a good adjustment. Like, people will say, oh, I can see better. They'll notice their tummy starts rumbling because they're digesting their food. It literally has an impact on the nervous system.
Yeah, I felt
Yeah, and that can be explained through a somatovisceral nervous system referral pattern, where you adjust the soma, you change the bony structure, and it affects the viscera, and that's proven in science that occurs. But then I also pay a lot of attention to other restrictions. So from a cranial perspective, there's restrictions in the cranial sacral system, which is more the brain and spinal cord and the cerebral spinal fluid and the membranes of the cranial sacral system. the dura mater and all of that. And so that can be restricted. And then there's also restrictions in the emotions, right? Like when you have an emotion embedded, there's also restrictions due to trauma and PTSD. There's restrictions due to people feeling isolated and separate because they don't have like a higher spiritual connection to anything, or they don't feel connected. You know, it's like that every man is an island, and I say man here like very intentionally. But we live in a society largely, unless you're pretty religious or involved in some sort of spiritual group with higher belief systems, or more faith, I should say, that is largely kind of based in separation. You know, we live in a dualistic, like either or, black, white. That's kind of the dominant paradigm of the United States. And so you really have to work here largely to feel connected, to feel like, you can look out and see trees and feel a connection, or you can walk down the street and see a homeless person and feel a connection, or, and that's funny because I'm sure we'll get to empathy, because as an empath, you can't help but feel the connection. You just a lot of times don't know how to deal with it, right? And that actually can be negative on your physical health, right? So I track how empathy creates restrictions in our systems, and then of course food and toxicity. If you're sensitive to food and you're eating it, or if people are eating crappy foods, that will create restrictions. If people are breathing bad air every day, the body's constantly fighting that. If there's different inflammation or disease processes, like, it's been fun working for this long, because now when I put my hands on people's body, I definitely can feel like if it's a systemic process going on, meaning affecting the full body, which changes the way I look at something versus if it's just like a localized restriction. And then you can also feel the emotional too, which is really interesting. And so I've tried to develop tools personally to help. And then there's also restriction, I should just say, with like physiological deficiencies like B12 being low, vitamin D, that sort of thing. And just to further define restriction, how I see it is it's where there's a lack of flow and a lack of vitality in the body. So it can be very clear, like, oh my gosh, this person's first cervical is completely locked. Or it can be more subtle in that I put my hands on somebody's body and it's like nothing, a lot of times actually it's completely locked up and like armored and like tight. And so there's no flow, or there's a fatigue and there's no flow. And so restriction is, to me, lack of flow. And then then the vitality is low vitality in the system. And that's kind of something that you have to feel. I have to feel it with my hands, because people surprise me. Like sometimes they'll seem really energetic and stuff like that, but then I put my hands on them and they're really tired underneath. So I'll train you how to do that at some point. but that's, so vitality and flow with restriction. And then to your second question of how to even know you're in it is such a great question. One of my favorite history questions that I learned from a really brilliant chiropractor, Datis Karazian, who's also a Harvard Research Fellow, and he has a PhD. He does a lot of incredible research. He taught us this in a seminar, was, when was the last time you felt normal? And how I changed that when was the last time you felt vitally normal? Like that you really felt good in your body, And sometimes I actually, for the first time, had a woman the other day who said, I've actually never felt that. But normally people do. Normally who I come in contact with, and it might be when they were little, it might be just moments when they felt their wholeness and their vitality. And how I would say personally that I feel that is, it's like when I feel in the greater flow of things, when I feel connected, when I feel embodied, because most people actually aren't even like in their bodies, you know. But when you feel like, when you're, for me it's easiest when I'm out in nature, or when I'm with loved ones, or when you're having a really great conversation and you just, everything feels alive and connected, and you can feel your own source energy, like that, your own innate intelligence, and then you can also feel how you're connected to everything else.
Well, I can see how this is also confusing in that, you know, we can feel that source of connection sometimes in, I don't know, not, I don't want to say escapism, but also in other forms of recreation, right? Like you go to a party or something and the music, and you feel so connected with it. Maybe you've had a drink or two and you're like,
Exactly.
you know, I think about people my age right now, and just in that excitement for life, or you're walking down the street and there's just so much going on, but it is fleeting, and it is so fleeting, and afterwards the depletion and the need for more, because it wasn't a sustainable form of vitality or feeling connected. I think people, like, I mean myself, get confused with that, and especially like in the performance world. And but there's, I like, I know in myself that this, it's not working completely, because why do every, you know, like I supplement with, oh, I'll just have another cup of coffee and I'll probably feel fine or something, whatever, and it feels harmful, but at the same time it's like I don't know necessarily another way to to feel that longevity.
Yeah.
How do you, yeah, I'm wondering, like,
Yeah.
how do you
It's such
begin
a good question. You know, and this is a funny moment you're catching me in, because I literally, I'm going to change that a little bit. I kept a journal since I was about 12. And just like the last 2 nights, I've been reading the one from when I was 25, the one I'm reading. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I was really in a lot of those questions that you're talking about right now. And personally, for me, it's gotten so much easier, like after I got married and after I found my career and after I had more control over my life, and like I have my own home, and, you know, and that I could I had more power to create the reality that I'm living in personally. Um, but that's not age dependent. I mean, what you're talking about is not age dependent. And I think it's largely a problem. I think we're really hard on ourselves in that we think it's our problem.
Yeah.
Like that it's your fault that you need another cup of coffee. Like there isn't something you're doing right. But really, it's the soup that we're swimming in. The soup that we're swimming in, the reality, the dominant reality we were born into, is not conducive of helping us feel connected. You know, and what's funny is social media and stuff is actually trying to reach into it's trying to reach into how to connect more and how to be connected, which I find really fascinating. And then it's human based, so then there's aberration, you know, within it. But I think so listening to you talk brought up a few themes for me that I pay a lot of attention to. Again, going back to being very fortunate in how I was raised with that chiropractic philosophy of the body is amazing, because how I was raised and how I really want to teach and raise my own children is that your body is a temple. And so why would you put crap in your body, you know? And I can't have judgments around people who have addictions, and drink. You know, I try not to have judgments around people who self-medicate with, you know, too much coffee or too much sugar, because I honestly feel like we're doing the best we can in the soup we were born into.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to be born into a lovely soup, but I don't know that many people who are. And even being born into a lovely soup, I still suffered quite a bit when I left my bubble, my particular, and went out in the broader world and saw how things were happening. Like part of the journal I was reading the other night was, I did a lot of travel in Asia and India, and I had made a comment that I was traveling, and I was writing about traveling and by myself in Southern California, and needing to change my behavior as a woman alone, because you're under threat as a woman in this country. Like we all, and like even I was telling my husband the other night, as a woman, if you're leaving a building at night with a girlfriend, you never get into your own car and leave without knowing that their car started, that they're in their car, that they're leaving also. Like there's just these unwritten, but that is messed up, right? That is not okay. The way we treat each other as humans in this country, as evidence right now with Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's like the systemic hierarchical bullshit that is at the very foundation, along with very beautiful tenets of our country. And I know this extends beyond our country, but it's this power over, my friend Holly always uses this word, hierarchy, I think is how you pronounce it, which is just power over. It isn't even patriarchy, but that isn't great either, but that's the dominant model. And so when we look out into the world and when we look back at ourselves, we can't help but compare. We can't help but have hierarchical models of like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty and I'm not that thin. I mean, it is absolutely embedded. So I think the main teaching for me around this is, how do you create the reality you want to live in? Like, what tenets does that reality hold? And then how do you find your team to create that reality, right? Because it's really hard to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Certain people do, like Gandhi was amazing, Mother Teresa, phenomenal. There are these source-based beings that are like great at bringing in a really strong reality, and like Martin Luther King, holding true to their truths no matter what obstacles. But a lot of us aren't there. We're not bodhisattvas. And so, I mean, honestly, when you reach for that cup of coffee, do it with kindness, that you're doing the best you can, and also, we need to look outside the box of what actually feeds us and what drains us, including relationships, including, when I pick up my phone, I try to limit myself to 5 minutes of Facebook a day. And so I just notice when I'm done with my 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, how do I feel? Was that a life enhancing activity for me, or did that make me feel bad? And it's life enhancing enough that I keep it on my phone, but I know a lot of people who are turning it off. So there's expectation around us feeling connected all the time, us feeling our best all the time. That is just not real. It's not realistic. And it also doesn't honor the fact that we go through in-breaths and out-breaths in our life. And that's something that Rudolf Steiner in the Waldorf training and the anthroposophical, so he did most of his work from 1919 to, for decades, German, and he started the Waldorf schools, which really honor humans as empaths and also the stages of development of a child, which wasn't really looked at a lot back then. So he really talks about the idea of the in-breath and the out-breath, and how even through the course of the day, we need to go through times where we're in out-breath, which is like, right now we're having this conversation, but after this conversation, ideally, we would both take a few minutes to have an in-breath and just be and integrate, assimilate, let ourselves have some downtime, and then go into our next activity. And that's particularly important with children, because we live in a society right now that's go, 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 do, do, do. And the more you go, 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 and do, 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 and gain, 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 and earn, 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 that bobblehead reality is like how we gauge success, right? Where really we don't give, I mean, COVID is actually so fascinating, the shelter in place, because it forced us to turn inward and to have an in-breath. And so it's just, you know, hopefully we don't need something as extreme as COVID to be able to just let these processes flow through us, and try to stay out of judgment around what our system is needing. And then as we become more and more true to that, when we look at that cup of coffee at some point, you go, I don't think I actually need that right now. I'm going to do some deep breathing. Or when you know, go out to a coffee shop, you think, okay, I'm just going to get my coffee and not get the scone as well. Or, you know, you just start noticing how you're grabbing for things. But again, it's not based on your own deficiency. It is based on the soup that you're swimming in, and we're doing our dangest, you know?
It is so helpful to hear those words, because the grabbing is real. And I think, especially right now, and it's, you know, this was my first year out of school. Things were going really well. Finally, after months of struggling to make ends meet, to continue dancing, to find community, whatever. And finally, it was like there. And then the next week, gone, literally the next week or over the weekend. Um, and it's hard time to be any age. And also, I find myself having thoughts. It's like, oh, well, might as well like try and have a family really quick, or because what it is, and I'm here in New York, and I was in the Bay Area, and like what I'm grabbing for is some sort of stability, some sort of hope. Like, you know, I'm like changing careers really quickly, and I'm reflecting on these things out loud because I know a lot of my peers are doing this as well. And it's like in this period of quietness, there are glimpses all the time of like, wow, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need to do that. Whether it's I don't need to post that, or I don't need to even like go outside for a little bit. I can stay within myself, or I don't need to watch that show, or like I don't need to buy
Yes,
those things. I don't need to do that.
absolutely.
And it's like these glimpses of, oh, but then they fade so fast. And I think they fade so fast because I don't have personally like those elements that are grounding me. In this journey into health has been, for my family, it was like really rough at first, for me, like learning about these different concepts in high school, and then going back to my family being like, what are we eating? Like, why are we doing this? Why do we celebrate with these foods or these behaviors that harm us? And what,
Right.
but those social elements are so real, and how you're accepted. And I'm kind of going on several tangents, but what I want to say is that it is these conversations about health, it's hard. They're just, it's difficult, and there's so much to learn and grab for, and also being young and feeling lonely in this world and feeling so lost right now, but
Yes.
having to trust that it is worth it, that I invest in my health. And I don't know what it's going to be like next year, and I can't ask my mom and my dad anymore, or my grandma
Right.
and grandpa.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I think I'm really, really, really careful with what I expose myself to. And I think a lot of times we feel a responsibility to like keep up with the news or know about, you know, like I think it's important. I did a lot of study in my life around power issues, women's issues, international issues, gender issues, race issues. And then after I had kids, especially, I became so extra sensitive that I still have a 6-year-old, you know, so I still have young children, and I see it changing in that I can expose myself now to a little bit more things that go against life. But a really great gauge me is that what is life generating? What 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 is this life generating for me? So whether it's a show, whether it's listening to any news or reading, actually do not do any news right now, like none. Because honestly, when I have a conversation with patients who are really feeling responsible about needing to keep up with news, I ask them, do you actually feel like you are getting real news? Like, is it all fake? I mean, it's all so biased right now. There, unless you go to like The Guardian or something out of a different country, I really don't feel like we're getting either on any side real news. And also, it's just devastating for me. Like, I personally suffer. It's life defeating for me when I expose myself to those things. And so while yes, I feel on some level a little wussy about it, I do hear about things that are important. They will filter through, and I just trust that what I need to know will come to me. But a lot of what you're expressing is age dependent, and also not with COVID now,
Yeah.
because we really have no future. A lot's been taken away. We don't know what the future holds. Like, we can't anchor into anything and then draw from that like we used to pre 2020, which is really, really challenging, and also can be used as a place of empowerment if you can learn how to keep, like, really, like, be a sentinel, like, stand guard on what you let yourself get exposed to and how you filter. And even what's kind of crazy is when you start getting really clear about this, you realize there's a number of relationships that won't even continue working in your life, that aren't life generating. And even places. And but then what's so amazing is the more you can steer on a course that keeps giving you life, that, like, and the thing is we have other forms of intelligence. We don't just have our mental minds, though they are very, very, very dominant in our soup that we swim in. Like, we're mostly mental, but we also have a gut intelligence, like a sentient intelligence that lives in our gut. And so the more we can just settle in, and what's not haha funny, but kind of funny, is that so many people have gut problems in the U.S. and and of course, with how most of the food is here, that's totally understandable, and the medicines and things like that. And I also feel like the gut is screaming at us and trying to say, look, listen to me. I know I have an intelligence. You're just up here all the time, but if we can get into a quieter place, the we do know, like, you do know what is feeding you, what is draining you, what is life enhancing, what is life defeating. And then it takes courage and diligence, and also a lot of personal agency and confidence and a feeling of worth. I mean, all these things that are so messed up in our culture, especially for women and women of color and people of color, and immigrants and all of that. But, like, to just go forward and trust your gut, and keep choosing the path that brings you into your next level of wholeness.
Wow, there's so much coming up for me too around that. And first of all, like, going to school and having to learn that language of power in a lot of ways, like how you present yourself and how you function in certain rooms. And it took a long time, and I felt like there was so much sheer terror and embarrassment and shame that went along with that, especially when some of my friends had completely mastered that, or like were used to that. And I just, relating to people in a certain way, um, in that very mental way, and being a dancer, knowing that there's a completely other side of relating to people too, but that's not valued in this room, and that's not
Right.
going to be worth anything. But also, what I hear you're saying, and like to clarify for people, it's not it's not like, don't it's not like not listening to the news to be naive and ignorant. It's what I hear you saying and what I've been thinking about and reading about is knowing that, yes, we are aware of issues and we are aware of different strategies for combating them, whether it's racism, socioeconomic deficiencies, poor health in this country, but also knowing that what you invest your time in, you're also giving your energy to and your power to.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so, like knowing that it is important that we dissect certain arguments or whatever's happening in politics, but also that yes, you that energy that you're giving to that specific thing that happened on the news or to that commentary or to that Facebook thread or to that
yeah,
Instagram repost, that is like really valuable. And also be careful with
be
how much
careful.
you're giving away,
Yep,
because you save that power to make change and start with yourself. And
yeah, yep,
that's also what I
absolutely.
hear you saying. And it's hard because it's like, I don't know how to fix anything, I don't know how to even feel good myself.
Right. So remember, and I'm fascinated with reality right now. And I asked one of my teachers, what is reality? And she said, it's merely what you hold it to be.
Mhm.
And so how do we focus our attention? And like, I love what you were saying about what do you give your attention to? And how does what you give your attention to change how you feel? And this is where the life enhancing, life defeating. Just try your hardest, especially as you grow older and have more control over what you have, like what you can pay attention to, because you're not in school right now and all of that, but like really focus on what's life enhancing. And then also, I love like Thich Nhat Hanh's work on the seeds that you plant are what will, and then how you pay attention to them is how they grow. And so even language is so important, and the words that we say create the reality that we live in personally. And then the reality, because we're already at the effect of this soup we're swimming in. And so even like when I have patients come into me, at least half of them will say something like, my shoulders and necks are always tight. I carry the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Mhm.
And I'll say to them, that's not okay. Like that's actually really hurting your body. And we have to figure out how you can be in relationship to the world where you don't carry that weight, and especially that in a way that embodies it physically,
Yeah.
right? Or they'll say something like, oh, it's my fault that my back hurts because I was silly and I went out and weeded the lawn when I shouldn't have, or whatever. And it's like, okay, right there, you are never going to get better, right? Because the way you just spoke about yourself isn't healthy. Like oh, I'm so silly, or oh, I'm so stupid. And really, it is really rooted in these societally implanted themes around shame and guilt and worth. And like Brene Brown has done incredible work around this, right? And women's studies, which is why I love women, why I ended up in women's studies and ethnic studies, has done incredible work because they're coming from the outside. They're not in the dominant paradigm. And when you're in the dominant paradigm, like AKA white men, for instance, it's hard to see the privilege. And it's hard to, you really have to kind of step out and see these deep rooted, and that's what I love about, one of the things I love about the Black Lives Matter and like Michelle Obama and how she talks about her family growing up, and just, it's absolutely systemic. This is when you are reaching for that second cup of coffee, you are actually fighting a system that doesn't support health and wellness and like true embodiment and individuality and uh like just living your optimal self, you know, because if we were really living all of that, we wouldn't actually be able, the system we live in wouldn't actually be able to persist. You know, actually, okay, let me try to repeat this. One of my friends said this comment the other day that was so brilliant. It was that one of the main aberrations is that people started to believe they were evil, or that they had evil in them. And that once, if we could just realize that evil exists, it wouldn't even have, and it wasn't in us, like it wasn't innate in us, evil wouldn't even exist, because we would know better. We would have, it would have a place, because darkness always has a place, but it wouldn't be given the attention, because we would know it wasn't us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a part of me when I work with the body is actually to remove, like, to try to empower the cells and our brains and our mental mind and all of that, to the point that we remember that we have everything inside of us for wholeness, for health, for feeling connected, for being a child of God, for resourcing source. You know, like, it is all there. Being a human is a divine gift, you know, like the Tibetan Buddhists say, this precious human life, you know, and that literally it's how do we create the system, you know, and work with these systems of oppression and hierarchy and hierarchy and all of that, that hold us back. And you also, I love how you also said, I don't know how to work with these systems. Like, how do I change these? And honestly, I do think it starts with yourself, like you also said, but really be clear that starting with yourself is not selfish, because we've also been taught that, you know, like, oh, you shouldn't go get a massage, and you shouldn't go to the chiropractor, and you shouldn't go spend all this money on yourself, and you, like, why do you need to take another time to go to that class? Or, you know, it's really interesting.
Work.
Yeah, it's interesting for me now that I have 3 kids, because that I don't have the time to focus on myself, but I still know I need it, and watching how that changes with motherhood. But and I do take it, I have to now, but I had to learn kind of the hard way. But just really taking, like, that isn't selfish, and we have to move beyond the model. It's the focusing on ourselves. And this actually brings us to that word swastika, the Sanskrit word that is my favorite definition of healing, which means establishment in self, healing as establishment in self. Because this self, which includes our body as temple, right? Our bodies are physical matter, but way beyond, because we're also timeless and eternal. But this self is all we have. This body is our house, our home, you know. And so when we start with that, it will change systems. And the way it changes systems is that we do our own growth work on behalf of. And that's something a lot of us forget about, because it's actually so innate in most of us. Like, but really, it's that bodhisattva vow of, I vow to keep returning until all sentient beings have reached enlightenment, you know. And while I don't necessarily, I'm obviously no bodhisattva, but I am a mother, and I am a healer, and these roles are so clearly on behalf of, you know. And how I navigate when I take time to take care of myself, it's the missing link that I think is embedded in all of us, but we don't pay enough attention to, is the on behalf of. Because really, how we're moving through life and what's directing you, just personally, because I know you, but I would argue in a non-aberrated reality, what's directing all of us is to bring humanity forward, is so that we can walk down the street and not see homeless people, is for you to have friends that aren't addicted to drugs and whatever else, you know, like, is a world that we don't hurt each other, and there is no prisons, and we don't have war, and we don't have suffering, and we don't have violence, and we treat each person with respect and honor, and we take care of our children, and we take care of our elders, and we take care of our planet, you know, like all of those things. But what's so beautiful, Annie, is that we wouldn't long for that if we didn't know it as true. Therefore, that is the strongest argument of you are whole, you are connected, you are a product of incredible divine power, because the reason you suffer, and the reason most of us are suffering, is that we're living in a world that doesn't honor what we hold to be true. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. I was so mad my phone rang. I was like about to start crying.
No, it's great. It's great. It's all good. Everything has a place.
Oh my God. I think this conversation too is like, I'm personally benefiting so much from this conversation right now, because the past many months has also, yes, there's been a lot of shock, and it's also been figuring out like so much work around how I identify, or what I can identify, and what it means to be in solidarity with different groups of people, and how to listen better, and all of this really, really, really important work. And also at the same time, like, while other parts of life felt like they were falling apart, and yeah, again, nothing to grasp onto, it there was almost in part this settling of like, this is reality, and that means like I have to step away from trying to pursue this connection with my own self in this weird paradoxical way, and knowing that like, no, that's not really true, but I don't like freeze, you know, fight,
Yeah.
fly, freeze. Yeah, I was in freeze for a big chunk of this time trying to figure it out, and still very much am in a lot of ways. But I think, I don't know, I'm kind of processing all of that, and like don't have so much to say in this moment. But I do think of, you know, for a concrete example for people, when you were talking earlier about what it means to feel this as a health practitioner with your two hands, and knowing different levels of where people are, bringing it back to that. Like, you can use me as an example if you want to. I came into the clinic seeking just help. I don't even remember why I made an appointment.
You hurt your back dancing.
For my back. I hurt my back dancing. But really, I don't remember that, because that's not what it was. It ended up being about. But you provided, you did some adjustments, I think, and you provided like a really long session of cranial sacral therapy. And in it, I remember being in such a daze. Like, it was the first time I felt held for a moment. I couldn't even talk. Like, you were talking to me, and I felt like there was nothing coming out, and it took all of my energy to produce a single sound. And afterwards, I felt like so raw, and also so much more like myself, and I had never experienced that before. But I don't know if can you describe what it's like to do that kind of work with people as like a healthcare practitioner, having this be your profession?
Yeah. Well, great question again. What grieves me is that a lot of people have work that isn't fulfilling for them. And so for me, I just feel so honored every day, and so blessed that I get to go to work and get paid to basically have the experience that you just described. And so I just really want to encourage everybody that listens to this, if you haven't chosen a career, to really think about what you want your days to look like, you know? And do you want to sit at a computer? Do you want to be in meetings? Do you want to live in a city? Do you want to live in the country? Do you, just like really think about what will bring your heart joy and what is meaningful to and I don't like, my husband works for the state of California. He's a scientist and he's a real smarty pants and highly educated, and he loves what he does. He works helping environmental projects happen and in the Sierras, and like he's very fulfilled, and feels a lot of meaning. And so it's not that you have to like be in healthcare or that's where like we have one of my favorite people in the world here locally is a woman that's like this big marijuana lawyer, and she just so embodies her power in what she does that I just stand in awe of her. So no matter what you do, I really would just hope that you could tap into that alignment of their deeper purposes, or at least be an investigation, and then how to bring that out into their work environment, because the way these things are also going to change with all these systems that we were born into in this soup is that we don't withstand what is considered normal. And COVID's really helping with that, as far as most of the people I talk to actually prefer working at home. And they're able to be out of these sometimes toxic workplaces or long commutes, and it's just really neat. Like they're seeing different ways of how they can work. And so I just wanted to preface my answer with that, in that I really hope that people can find meaning and connection in whatever work they're doing. Because for me, that's the most important thing that's occurring every day. And honestly, in my practice, I've gotten to the point of like, I'm a chiropractor, so I should care if like your back hurts or your neck hurts or, something like that. But truthfully, I hardly even care about that anymore. And so luckily I have other chiropractors in the office. If somebody really has an extreme musculoskeletal thing that I can't just kind of take care of more quickly through what I do, I'll refer to them. Like I just had a hip bursitis lady that I'm going to refer. But if somebody has any, like, what I really care about is helping people feel whole and connected. And that doesn't have to be through cranial work or chiropractic. But for me, that is the tools that I have. And so, so we all come in with certain connections and skills, and you're at a really important point in your life but I think also humanity is at a really important moment where we get to reinvestigate how we fit in, and how we want to move forward. And the skills that I have, I feel really grateful for. But truthfully, it's just to me, like I said, about helping people feel that wholeness.
Yeah. And that is what I felt coming out of that appointment. And then you told me about this book on what it means to be an empath, and what it means, for people who don't know what that is, really highly sensitive person, and who's so affected by the world and the people around them in a way they can't ignore.
Right.
And I got that book and just started reading and investigating from other sources as well, and it changed my life. It changed the way I was able to communicate with people. It changed the way I saw myself in relationship and understood, because like I want to be generous. I want to give people my time. I want to help them with their visions. Like I feel like I get pulled into a lot of projects, and I'm so honored. But what happens is that I'm unable to think my own thoughts at the end of the day if I don't have 5 minutes to myself. And it is so hard to sometimes explain that to people, because you don't want people to be offended. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. But it really, like, beyond that, it's still such a deep investigation with me, because I think it is an important source of power or important tenet to go off of and to live life from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm grateful to have gone to that appointment a few years ago with you.
Mhm.
And I I don't know. It's I think like what I want to say is that health healthcare can look like so many different things to so many people, but a lot of people haven't been exposed, right, to certain forms of healthcare because of the soup we swim in, like you said, the soup we live in. And um, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to say anything else about that before we wrap up?
Yeah, I do. I guess I want to lay the foundation for, I know, a conversation that both of us want to have around empathy
Yeah.
and our empathic design. So I'll just presence that here, which is that, um, gosh, probably about 3 years ago now, one of my friends said, "Well, don't you think everyone who comes to you is empathic or is an empath?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And then I thought, "What's an empath?" And so I think one of the top Googled words of 2019 was empathy or empath. So it's really cool because these are, to me, this is evidence that we're moving in the right direction, that consciousness is evolving, that unity has a place, like there's, I really pay attention to what I call realities of unity. And to me and feminism, I think, was 2016 when Trump was elected, was one of the number one words Googled, so I keep track of things that show me that we're moving in the right direction as a human race. But empathy is, so then I looked up empathy then, and then I did read that book by Judith Orloff, The Empath Survival Guide. And she's an MD, and it was a game changer for me also. And I can't believe I got to like being 40 years old or something until I really understood empathy. And so I would love to have that conversation with you. But just to put it out there, it's when you can feel everything. And my argument, which I'll at some point hopefully write about and all that, is that we have an empathic design as human beings, that we're all empathic, and that merely we get aberrated as children and born into certain families and certain places. But even a narcissist, according to John O'Donohue, who's an Irish poet and writer, he said that a narcissist is somebody that craves love so much that they just need to love themselves, and focus on that in like that narcissistic love for themselves. And if you can go back to the craving love so much, that's also an empath. We need that connection. We thrive on that love. And so anyway, I don't have all my arguments together yet for that we're all empathic, like that being a human is an empathic design, but I'm working on it. And then the better we understand that, the better we'll understand how we fit into the world, and the better we'll understand how we suffer and also how we experience joy. But what I would like to just end with from myself is that for me, 2020, one of my goals for 2020, this was before COVID even happened, but was to transform what I've always considered to be my greatest weaknesses into my greatest strengths. Because it's only the soup we're swimming in that tells us like that being emotional, over emotional, or too sensitive, or like being, it's just needing alone time, or the overly emotional and the too sensitive are the two big ones, like that we've considered those to be weaknesses. But that's actually, to me, evidence of the messed up soup we're swimming in, because honestly, those should be our greatest strengths. And so that I just want to put that out there, that we're this intention, we have a few more months of 2020, but that the things that we've always considered to be our greatest weaknesses are actually our greatest strengths.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna write that last part down, and I literally just want to go to my journal right now and
Yeah.
write and reflect. I needed this
Do it.
conversation, and I hope that you know people get to listen. And it's
Yeah, me too. Yeah, on behalf of all love and life. Thanks, Annie.
thank you,
Take care.
thank you,
Bye-bye.
bye. Thank you everyone for listening. That was one of the first in a series of videos that Dr. Heather Hunt and I will be making in collaboration to discuss these topics surrounding health and what that means right now. So we wish you all well and we wish you all health. Take care.